Hey everyone, okay, so today's video I'm going to be talking about cosmetic ageism, which is a subject that is rarely ever covered, particularly in almost any magazine. You almost never hear anything of it. So in this video I'd like to cover cosmetic ageism, skincare ageism as well, and just my general thoughts and recommendations as we move forward and as we get older, because as we get older our skin changes, everything changes about us. But we need to look at different ways of applying things, but also different ingredients to get them to work the most beautiful as we get older. So let's make a start. I don't think it's a lie to say that 95% probably of the global makeup brands are aimed at a younger demographic, which is kind of odd as well, because a lot of them are very high end, and yet you can definitely see that they're aimed at a younger demographic, which is strange because the younger demographic generally has less money than the older demographic, but that just tends to be the way it is. Also, it's easier, and there is no doubt about this, it's easier to apply makeup on younger skin because younger skin is firmer, it is tighter, it is more taut, and you're able to apply makeup much more easily. And anybody who is perhaps my age and above will understand that as we get older, things move differently on the skin. Now, when you're thinking of applying makeup or buying makeup, and you're a woman or a man in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, it's important that we look at not only the ingredients, but also how it's formulated. And when I mention about a younger demographic, what I oftentimes mean by that is the pigment load. And they make for wonderful YouTube videos as well. So what happens is you get a palette, let's say it's an eyeshadow palette, and it has a really heavy pigment load. So you swatch it and you're like, oh, because it's so heavily pigmented. And that's wonderful and it looks amazing. Now the problem is that as we get older, our skin changes and the texture and the elasticity changes. It becomes looser and it moves around more. Now, when you apply a very heavily pigmented product onto skin that has movement, it is harder to blend, because imagine looking at a sheet of paper and it's taut. Now, imagine taking that same sheet of paper, crumpling it up, and then kind of spreading it back out again. Now imagine applying the makeup on that. There's more grooves, there's more areas for it to move in. And that's why very heavily pigmented eyeshadows in general are much harder to apply and harder to blend because they lack the emolliency. And cosmetic chemists and the makeup houses all know this, but they still produce incredibly pigmented eyeshadows because they are aiming at a younger demographic. But we don't necessarily know that, so we're buying these products and then thinking there's something wrong with us and the way that we apply our makeup because we can't get the same results that they were getting, that the younger generation are getting. Now, when I started to think about my makeup line and creating my makeup line, I was very, very, very focused on women over 40. And the reason for that is because if you can create a makeup that will look wonderful on somebody who is 50 or 60 or 70, it is gonna look amazing on all ages. And my line is for all ages. But as I mentioned with the pigment load, it doesn't always work the other way. Just because something looks amazing on somebody who is 20 doesn't mean it's gonna look as wonderful on somebody who is 50 or 60 because of that pigment load, because there has been no manipulation to allow it to glide on easier as we get older. And let's be honest, if you are over 40 or 50 or however you are, however old you are, we know that we're getting left out, whether it's in beauty or skincare or fashion. I cannot tell you how many times my mother is walking around town and she is just cannot find things to wear that she feels comfortable in for her age, because it always seems to be, again, aimed at a younger demographic. And I don't understand that. There's this, and I'm going to touch on this subject in a second, but there is this assumption that you can't be sexy if you're over 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. And it doesn't make any sense. I don't think it's that much of a stretch to say that a lot of CEOs, a lot of them are men who own and run these giant cosmetic companies, and they are almost always straight men. And of course, straight men think about creating this seduction. They're going to create a seductive advert, a seductive print, whatever it is. It almost certainly, especially if it's for perfume, right? It almost always is somebody in their 20s, a couple of young people in their 20s. And they're kissing and they're being pushed up against a wall, and it's very passionate and very sexy. And one of them's got a bottle of perfume or aftershave in their hands, and they're all, you know, look amazing, and they're all a size 2 and they've got a 6-pack. Have you noticed that those adverts, the perfume ones, are only ever aimed, and they almost always only have young models in it? It is like that if you are 50, you don't count, right? Because when was the last time you saw a 50-year-old man or a 50-year-old woman in that kind of advert being pushed up against the wall, kissing passionately? You never see it, right? They're focusing once again on that younger generation, and it is giving you a clear message, which is like, I'm sorry, you're over 50. You don't count anymore. Sexuality, sex, feeling sexual, being desired, sorry, you don't count. This is for the young. That's such bullshit. It just doesn't make any sense, because once again, the men and women buying these products are over 40 predominantly, and that's what's so infuriating about it. What is so horrific about seeing somebody in their 40s or 50s or 60s kissing or being happy or seducing each other? Why does it always have to be focused on that young demographic when there are so many of us who are over 40? As we get older, our skin changes. And this is something that's really interesting and something that is glossed over in pretty much every magazine you will ever read. As women get older, they will inevitably face the menopause. And I think if you were to ask any man what the menopause is, they would probably say hot flushes. Some may even say loss of period, and both would be correct. Those are definitely things that happen during the menopause for most people. I'm referring to the hot flushes there. Some do, some don't. What you never see is what the menopause truly actually is. It's rarely ever written about. It's certainly never spoken about. The menopause is the permanent loss of the female sex hormones. So for any men out there who are watching this, and why would you, but maybe there are, for any men watching this, I'll repeat that. The menopause is the permanent loss of the female sex hormones. And that is a really, really big deal. And magazines gloss over it. The closest you'll get is the absence of a period. But that is a symptom of losing the female sexual hormonal system, right? But you never hear this. It's like, I always think the easiest way to explain it to perhaps a guy is to say, imagine losing 90% of your testosterone. How is that going to make you feel internally, mentally, physically? And I don't think anybody quite understands the incredible change that happens, and not only just hormonally, because your hormones are level perhaps, and then you go through the change and they're completely off because you're losing this whole reproductive system. And all hormones are interconnected, they're all balanced. So when one is off, they're all off. And no one ever speaks of it, right? You never hear it. You just hear about what to deal with hot flushes. But with the menopause comes other things. Your skin changes, you lose bone and muscle, your collagen production starts to go down, skin elasticity starts to change. Your skin can become drier. These are all things that need to be addressed with skincare as well as in makeup, because we need things to go on the skin easily, beautifully, smoothly. You never hear about it, right? You just never hear about it. And I don't understand why we're not hearing about all of these things, because these are really important topics and they're just missed because they're either not sexy enough or because people do not want to address what these things really are, and they're glossing over it. And when you gloss over something, it doesn't ever make it better, right? When I started my career in terms of selling brushes, I was very, very specific. I think you could probably even find it perhaps, the original video on my brushes. The purpose of creating my brushes was to not allow skin to move, or at least for skin to move the very least possible. If anybody is perhaps my age and remembers the original MAC brushes, They had this brush called, I think it was a 224 brush, very famous brush. Felt like you were exfoliating your eyelids with it. It was a crease brush. And oddly enough, for most people, it was way too big to fit in the crease anyway. But there it is. It was the 224, I believe. And it was a coarse, hard brush. It moved the skin. When I created my line, the purpose was for it to not move the skin or to move it the least possible. That's why they were made in Japan. They were made by artisans. They were not cut. They give it this silk smooth feeling, which causes minimal skin movement. Because as we age, our skin is moving. We want to move it the least possible with our tools so that we're able to get the product where we want it and blend it very, very soft and subtly. And this was back, I think, 8 or 9 years ago, maybe now, 8 years ago perhaps. Because I've always been interested in the fact that we're all going to get older. And by not understanding that and by not respecting it and by not creating tools and products that work on all ages, we are missing a huge generational gap. We are saying to the people who are over 40 and 50 and 60 and beyond, you don't count. And you do count. I'm over 40, I'm 42. I do count. And my body, my mind, everything is different than when it was when I was 20. Thank God. And we have to adapt and we have to change. And while I don't think the cosmetic industry is going to be changing anytime soon, with my line that I'm creating, and currently there are blushes, there are lipsticks, glosses, pencils, and an eyeshadow palette. And the whole range is geared towards all ages. They will work on all ages. Whether you are 60 or 16, it will work and it will go on smoother. The pigment loads have been changed and altered to allow for specific applications. So here's a good thing. As we get older, our skin will change. The texture of our skin will change. Oftentimes it can become more pigmented as we get older or more sallow. Now, we're often told that when you get older, you need less foundation. That is true, but not really. What is actually needed is more pigment with a sheerer application, because you're having other issues as you get older with pigmentation, so you need that covered, but you need it covered with the most amount of pigment in the thinnest application. Because if you use a tinted moisturizer or a very light foundation and you're trying to cover those things, you're going to be using more than one layer. You're going to be using layer upon layer, and each layer builds until you've got a thicker application. Now, when you look at eyeshadows, generally speaking, as we get older, eyeshadow pigment needs to decrease slightly and the pigment in foundations needs to increase. Does that make sense? Because the eye area moves more, so we need a thinner application that still has color, because it then blends and smooths and goes on easily. And that's what my line is about. It's about focusing on you, on me, on the 20, the 30, the 40, the 60, the 70 plus year olds. That's what the line is about. And as you'll see, when more product comes out, it will always work for you, for your age and your skin type. That is the point of this. That is the point of my brand. I'm trying to focus on you, the age you are today, because you are the most important. And I want you to feel beautiful. I don't want you to be transformed into somebody else. My line is not about that. I want you to be the most beautiful version of yourself that you can be at the age that you currently are. Because that is beauty. For me, beauty isn't just this exterior. It is about how you feel, how you think about yourself. And that is just as important, if not more important, than anything else. And that's the end of my talk. I hope you found it relatively interesting. I'd love to hear your comments below in the comment section. I think it's a very interesting topic that we are, in general, is not being addressed, whether it is skin aging, which we hear all the time because there are anti-aging adverts out there for everything. Oftentimes they'll be showing a much younger model or a famous actress or model who perhaps is in their 40s or 50s, but also has millions and millions in the bank and the best surgeons, dermatologists, makeup and hair teams. We do not. I do not have that myself. You probably almost certainly do not have that either. But you still deserve to look and feel your best. So hopefully this video, I hope, has been relatively interesting for you. But again, let me know what your comments are below. I truly believe that beauty is for all ages, and we need to start focusing on all ages and not just the younger generation. They are a very, very important generation. But my generation and your generation is just as important. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.